I remember the day my world cracked open, not from the sound of my own sobs, but from the quiet laughter of my sister in the next room. 3 weeks earlier, I had been the happiest woman alive, engaged to the love of my life, planning our wedding, dreaming about our child growing inside me. Then, one rainy night, my sister Ashley came home with red eyes and a trembling voice. She told Bayo, my fiancé, that I had miscarried. She held me in her arms in front of him, whispering, "It's okay, I'll handle everything. Rest." But as I lay in bed days later, weak and broken, I overheard her laughing on the phone, telling someone, "Now he'll be mine." That was the moment my grief caught fire, and turned into something far colder. Since we were little, Ashley never seemed happy for me. If I got a new dress, she would say it was only because someone felt sorry for me. If I did well in school, she would say it was luck, not hard work. She never smiled when I shared good news. She would just look away or change the topic, like my happiness was something she couldn't stand to see. When I met Bayo, everything in my life felt brighter. He was kind, gentle, and loved me in a way I had always dreamed of. When he proposed, I ran home to tell my family, expecting hugs and excitement. My parents were happy, but Ashley, she just stood there, her lips pressed tight, her eyes cold. She didn't congratulate me. She didn't even try to hide her discomfort. It was like she had swallowed something bitter. I tried to ignore it. I told myself maybe she was just tired or distracted, but deep down, I felt something strange. It wasn't just that she didn't care, it was like she was angry that it was me standing there with the ring, not her. I remembered all those times in the past when she made little comments, saying I didn't deserve the good things I got. Those memories started to feel heavier now. Whenever Bayo came to visit, Ashley would watch us closely. She would notice every laugh we shared, every gentle touch. Her eyes would linger in a way that made me uneasy. She never said anything directly, but I could feel it, that quiet jealousy that hides behind silence. Looking back, I should have known that this kind of jealousy doesn't just disappear. It waits, it watches, and when the right moment comes, it acts. At the time, I didn't realize Ashley's silence was not peace, it was the sound of her planning. It was a quiet evening, and I was sitting in the living room when a sudden sharp pain hit me. It was so strong that I couldn't even call out for help. My vision blurred, and before I knew it, everything went dark. When I opened my eyes again, I was lying on my bed. My head felt heavy, and my body was weak. Ashley was sitting beside me, holding a handkerchief to her face. Her eyes were wet, but something about her tears didn't feel real. She reached for my hand and spoke in a slow, gentle voice, telling me I had fainted. Then she took a deep breath, like she was preparing herself to say something difficult. She told me Bayo had come over immediately after she called him. And then, she said the words that broke me, I had lost the baby. Her voice was soft, almost too soft, as if she wanted it to sound tender and full of care. She even tried to look at me with sympathy, but her expression didn't match her eyes. I could see something else there, something she was trying to hide. My heart felt heavy, and I wanted to cry, but the tears wouldn't come. I just lay there, trying to understand how everything could change so fast. She went on, telling me how she had comforted Bayo, how shocked he was, how she stayed strong so I could rest. Every word felt strange, like she was making herself the hero of a story. Her hands were shaking slightly as she spoke, but it wasn't the kind of shaking that comes from sadness. It was the kind of shaking you see in someone who has done something they know they shouldn't, someone who is afraid of being found out. I was too weak to ask questions. My mind was clouded, my body still aching. I closed my eyes, thinking maybe I would wake up and find out it was all a bad dream. But when I opened them again, she was still there, sitting close, watching me carefully. That night, I felt something deep inside me change. My joy, my plans, the life I had been building, it all felt like it had been taken away in one moment. I didn't know it then, but this was not just a tragedy. This was the night my joy was stolen, and the thief was sitting right next to me, pretending to cry. 3 days passed, and I was still weak, my body heavy from both the pain and the emptiness I felt inside. That afternoon, I woke up thirsty and slowly pulled myself out of bed. My steps were unsteady, and I held the wall for support as I made my way to the kitchen. As I passed Ashley's room, I heard her voice. It was not the gentle, caring tone she had used when she told me I had lost my baby. This voice was light, playful, almost excited. I stopped without thinking. The door was slightly open, and I could hear her clearly. Yes, he believes it, she said, her voice almost laughing. Soon, he'll be mine. I'll look better in that wedding dress anyway. The words hit me like a slap. I stood frozen in the hallway, my breath caught in my throat. I didn't move, afraid that the slightest sound would alert her to my presence. My heart began to pound so loudly that I was sure she could hear it through the wall. My hands started trembling, and my legs felt like they might give way beneath me. In that moment, everything became clear. The miscarriage she told Beo about, the tears she had wiped from her face, the way she hovered around him every time he visited, it wasn't care, it wasn't love for me. It was all part of a plan. A plan to take the man I loved and replace me in the life I had built with him. I pressed myself against the wall, barely daring to breathe, as her voice continued in that same cheerful tone. I didn't need to hear more, I already understood. She wasn't just being cruel because of old jealousy. She was deliberately destroying me so she could have what was mine. She wanted my wedding, my future, my happiness, all for herself. My chest felt tight, not from sadness this time, but from something sharper, colder. I thought back to the way she looked at Beo, how she stayed close to him when I was too weak to get up, how she had cooked his favorite meals as if she were the one taking care of him now. Every detail that I had brushed aside suddenly stood out like flashing lights. I realized I wasn't just dealing with a jealous sister. I was facing someone who had made a choice, to lie, to manipulate, to tear apart her own blood for the sake of her desire. This was not an accident. It was a theft. A theft of my life, my love, my joy. I stood there for what felt like forever, my throat burning and my hands gripping the wall for strength. Then, without making a sound, I turned and walked back to my room. I lay down, staring at the ceiling, knowing nothing would ever be the same again. This was the moment my grief began to change into something else entirely. Beo still came to see me after the news of the miscarriage, but things didn't feel the same anymore. Every time he visited, Ashi always seemed to be around. She never gave us a moment alone. If we sat together in the living room, she would suddenly appear with tea or snacks, smiling like she was just being helpful. But I noticed how her hand stayed on his arm a little longer than necessary when she served him, how she leaned closer when she talked to him. It made my stomach twist. When Beo told a joke, she laughed louder than she ever laughed with me. Her laughter wasn't soft or shy, it was big and bright, like she wanted him to notice her joy. And he did. I saw the way his eyes went to her when she laughed. At first, I told myself I was imagining it, but the feeling wouldn't leave me. She even started cooking his favorite meals, the ones I used to make for him. She would present them proudly, telling him how she had made them just the way he liked. He would smile and thank her, and I would sit there quietly, feeling like an outsider in my own home. It was as if she had taken my place without even asking, and no one was stopping her. Beo's calls to me became shorter. He used to talk to me for hours, telling me about his day, asking about mine, making sure I felt loved and cared for. Now, the calls lasted only a few minutes. Sometimes, he didn't even call at all, saying he had been busy. But I knew it wasn't just work keeping him away. When he visited, his eyes didn't search for mine first anymore. They used to light up when he saw me, but now, they flickered toward Ashi before settling on me. It hurt in a way I can't fully describe. I had already lost my baby, and the grief was heavy enough to crush me. But now, I was watching the man I loved slowly slip away from me too, and the worst part was that it was my own sister's hand pulling him away. She didn't hide it. She didn't even try to be subtle. She was taking small pieces of my life day by day, and I felt powerless to stop it. I lay awake at night, thinking about how everything had changed so fast. Just weeks ago, we had been planning our wedding, dreaming about our future together. Now, there was a cold distance between us, and Ashi was filling that space. I realized then that grief hadn't only taken my child, it was also taking my love, my trust, and my place in the life I thought was mine. And Ashi was the one leading it away. One morning, I heard the sound of the postman dropping letters at our door. I didn't expect anything important, but when I picked them up, one envelope caught my eye. It was thick, golden, and shining under the light. My heart started beating faster, though I didn't know why. My hands felt strangely cold as I broke the seal and pulled out the card inside. The words stared back at me in bold, elegant letters. You are invited to the wedding of Beo and Ashi. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I read it again and again, hoping I was seeing it wrong, but the letters didn't change. There it was, my fiancé's name and my sister's name, printed together as if they had belonged side by side all along. I looked at the date, and my chest tightened even more. 2 months from now. 2 months. Barely enough time for my heart to even heal from the lies they had told. And then my eyes dropped to the location printed on the card. I felt something inside me break. It was the very same wedding hall Bayo and I had booked months ago. I remembered the day we had gone to see it, walking hand in hand, imagining how beautiful it would look on our special day. I had chosen it because the place had large windows that let the sunlight pour in, making everything glow. And now, Ashley had taken that too. I stood there in the middle of the room, holding the invitation with shaking fingers. It felt like holding a piece of glass that was cutting into my skin, but I couldn't drop it. Every detail on the card was a reminder of what I had lost, not by accident, but because someone I trusted had stolen it. The golden edges of the paper looked beautiful, but to me, they felt cruel. I imagined Ashley sitting somewhere, choosing the design, smiling at the thought of me opening it. She wanted me to see it. She wanted me to know she had replaced me completely, not just in Bayo's heart, but in the very moments I had once dreamed of. I thought about how she must have worn my joy like a dress, taking it piece by piece until it fit her perfectly. And Bayo, the man who had promised to love me forever, he had not only let her take my place, he had given it to her. My legs felt weak, so I sat down, still holding the card. I didn't cry. The pain was too deep for tears now. This wasn't just betrayal, it was the final blow, the proof that they had taken everything from me. My baby, my love, my trust, and now even the wedding that was supposed to be mine. That golden envelope didn't just carry an invitation to their wedding. It carried the clear message that I had been completely erased from the life I had built, and replaced by the one person who should have protected me. I didn't shout at her. I didn't ask questions. I didn't even let her see how much she had hurt me. Instead, I kept my face calm, almost smiling, whenever she walked into the room. When she talked about her wedding, showing me dress sketches or discussing the food menu, I nodded and pretended to listen. She thought I was broken, too weak to fight back. She thought I had accepted what happened. But inside me, something had shifted. I wasn't just sad anymore, I was focused. I began to watch her more closely, to listen carefully to every word she said. Whenever she received calls from Bayo, I noticed the way her voice changed, how she giggled like a schoolgirl. I started keeping track of things she mentioned without thinking, like the fact that she had been meeting him even before the night of my miscarriage. I began to collect proof, piece by piece. I saved messages that came to my phone by mistake, where she asked friends for advice on how to win him over completely. I wrote down small things I overheard, her telling someone she had always been the better choice for him, or that soon, everyone would forget I was ever in the picture. Neighbors began to talk too. Some mentioned seeing her and Bayo together at the market weeks before I lost the baby. Others said they noticed how close they were at events, even when I was there. I listened without reacting, storing every detail in my mind like pieces of a puzzle. I knew that if I confronted her too soon, she would deny everything, twist the story, and make me look like the bitter, jealous sister. I had seen her do it before in smaller ways. But this time I wouldn't give her the chance. If she wanted to stand on a stage in front of everyone, smiling proudly as if she had won, I would make sure she did, but not with the story she imagined. Every day, she grew bolder. She would walk into my room holding fabric samples, asking my opinion on colors as if I were her wedding planner. She even tried on shoes in front of me, saying, "You have to admit, I'll look stunning walking down the aisle." I smiled at her, and she mistook my calm for defeat. She didn't realize I was already preparing the moment when all her lies would collapse around her. She wanted the spotlight, the applause, the attention of the whole town. I decided I would give it to her, only with the truth shining so brightly that no one would see her beauty, only the ugliness beneath it. I stayed quiet, I stayed patient, and I planned. Because sometimes, silence is not weakness. Sometimes, silence is the sharpest weapon of all. On the night of their wedding, while everyone was still celebrating and dancing, I was in my room, calm and steady. I had prepared something days before, and now it was time to send it. I placed it in a box, wrapped it in shiny paper, and tied it with a gold ribbon so it looked like the most thoughtful gift in the world. Anyone seeing it would think it was a sweet gesture for the happy couple. Inside the box was a smaller box, one that carried the truth she had worked so hard to hide. On top, I placed the pregnancy test I had taken before everything happened, the one that showed I was expecting, proof that my baby had been real. Below it, I put a printed photo of my ultrasound, clear and dated, showing the tiny life inside me before it was taken from me. And at the very bottom, I placed the thing that would make her heart stop, a small recorder. On it was the phone call I had overheard, the one where she laughed and told someone, "Yes, he believes it. Soon, he'll be mine. I'll look better in that wedding dress anyway." Her own voice, full of pride in her betrayal, ready to be played again and again. I added a card on top of everything, handwritten in neat letters. It said, "For my dear sister, may your marriage be as pure as the way it began." I sealed the box and handed it to a hotel staff member with instructions to deliver it to the bridal suite. I imagined her opening it with a smile, thinking I had sent her jewelry or perfume. I could see her face in my mind, the moment her eyes fell on the pregnancy test, the ultrasound, and finally, the recorder. The moment the fake happiness of her wedding night cracked. I didn't need to be there to watch it. I didn't need to see her expression or hear the arguments that would follow. I knew the truth would speak louder than anything I could say. The proof was undeniable. It was physical, dated, and recorded in her own words. As I sat in my room, I felt no rush of revenge or excitement. I felt something quieter, heavier, the feeling of finally letting go of the weight I had carried. I had given her exactly what she wanted, the stage, the spotlight, and the attention. But I had also given her the truth she could never hide from again. That night, while she wore her wedding dress and smiled for the world, she was holding the pieces of my broken life in her hands, and now, everyone would know how she got them. At 1:14 in the morning, my phone started ringing. I looked at the screen and saw Beo's name. I hesitated but answered. His voice was trembling, almost breaking. "Zella, is this true?" he asked. I didn't reply. I couldn't. My throat felt tight, and my chest was heavy. Instead of saying anything, I quietly ended the call. I sat there in silence, staring at the phone, knowing that in that single moment, something inside him had cracked forever. A few minutes later, the quiet night was broken by the sound of shouting from down the street. I could hear Beo's voice, angry and hurt, mixing with another voice I couldn't make out. Then came the crash of glass shattering, sharp and loud, followed by a heavy door slamming so hard it echoed through the empty street. I didn't move. I just sat still, listening to every sound fade into the night. My heart was pounding, not from fear, but from the knowing that this was the end of whatever fairy tale Ashley had been living. When morning came, the street was calm again, almost too calm. I stepped outside and looked toward Beo's house. The curtains were drawn, the gate stood slightly open, and the air felt heavy. Neighbors whispered to each other in low voices. By midday, word had spread. Ashley was gone. She had left the house she once called her home, the place where she had smiled for pictures and laughed like her life was perfect. Now, it stood silent, holding only the remains of a love that had shattered in the dark. Everything had changed with one phone call. For so many years, Ashley had worn her mask well. She laughed loudly in public, shared sweet words with the neighbors, and always painted me as the bitter, jealous sister who couldn't be happy for her. People believed her easily. They saw her as the good one, the victim, and me as the troublemaker. I carried that label quietly, even when it burned inside me. But then, everything changed. The truth finally came out, not in whispers, but in a clear voice that could not be denied. The recording was played right there in front of the villagers, and every word she had spoken against me, every lie she had spread, poured out into the open like rain spilling across the busy market floor. There was no stopping it, no way for her to twist the story this time. I stood in the crowd, my heart pounding, not out of fear but relief. For the first time in years, I didn't have to defend myself. The proof spoke louder than I ever could. The neighbors who once looked at me with suspicion now stared at Ashley with wide eyes, their faces shifting from shock to disappointment. She tried to smile, just like she always did when trouble came near, that same sweet smile that had fooled so many. But this time, it didn't work. It felt empty, fake, everyone could see it now. The charm that once protected her was gone, stripped away in seconds. Her eyes darted around, searching for someone to take her side, but no one stepped forward. I watched as people began to whisper, but now the whispers were different. They weren't about me anymore. They were about her, about how they had been fooled, about the things they should have noticed but didn't. It was strange, almost painful, to see the person who had caused me so much hurt finally stand in the light of her own truth. The children who used to run to greet her now clung to their mothers. The women who once envied her dresses and soft words now turned away when she passed. The men who had defended her lies no longer met her eyes. She was no longer the woman they admired. She was the woman who betrayed her own blood and smiled while doing it. And no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't go back to the way things were before. That day, I didn't say a single word. I didn't need to. The village had finally seen her for who she really was. And in that silence, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: peace. The truth had spoken for me, and it was louder than every lie she had ever told. I didn't take Bayo back. I knew deep down that love built on lies was like a cracked pot. No matter how much you tried to fix it, it would still leak. My heart had been through enough. So, I packed my clothes into a small suitcase, closed the door behind me, and walked away. I left for the city with nothing but my dignity, and that was worth more than any ring or promise. There was no child in my arms, no man beside me, but I felt lighter than I had in years. I didn't need to destroy his life to feel at peace. Sometimes, the sweetest revenge is simply showing someone the truth they've been running from, holding up the mirror to their face, and then walking away before they have the chance to beg you to stand there and look at it with them. I knew he would see his reflection every day, and that was enough. I didn't need to watch him break. I had my own life to build, far from the lies, far from the pain, and with every step I took, I felt freer. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs the reminder, and follow for more real stories that prove walking away can be the greatest victory of all.